Hey, what's going on? It's Jerry Glean back on the scene here with another video. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to get the best reverb settings for your vocals. So let's hop right in and get to it. Okay, so one quick tip before getting started is that you always want to have your reverb set up in parallel with your vocal. What this means is that you don't load the reverb plugin directly on your main vocals mixer channel like you would with an EQ or a compressor. Instead, you want to load the reverb plugin on its own separate channel like I have over here in yellow. So you'll see here at the bottom of the mixer channel of the main vocal, a copy of the main vocal is being sent out to the reverb's mixer channel. And so then I can control the volume of the actual reverb by itself with just this volume fader right here. This also allows me to add additional processing and plugins on the reverb's channel without affecting the vocal. So now that you understand how to set up your reverb in parallel with your vocal, let's go ahead and mute everything in the song but the vocal and the reverb, and let's press play and bring this volume fader up to a spot to where we can really hear the reverb, and it doesn't have to be perfect. We'll come back and adjust this later on.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight.
Okay, so you can use any reverb plugin that you want. One of my favorites is this one right here, the Valhalla Vintage Verb. And down here in the bottom left of the plugin, you can select between all of the different reverbs that they offer. For me, I like using the plate reverb and the hall reverb. So for this tutorial, I'm gonna use the plate reverb. Definitely experiment with all the different types of reverbs that are offered because they're all gonna have their own unique sound. But when you're setting up your reverb, there's really two settings that you need to get correct. So let me help you understand what these two settings are and exactly what they do. The first setting we're gonna go over is decay, and some reverbs also refer to this as reverb time. And what this setting controls is how long the reverb actually plays out. So in other words, how long does the reverb last? You'll see here that this parameter, the decay parameter, is measured and controlled in seconds. So right now I'm telling this reverb plugin to make the actual reverb only last 2 seconds. Now the second setting that you need to know is what's called the pre-delay. And the pre-delay is simply the amount of time between the actual vocal signal and the onset of the reverb. Or in other words, after a word is saying, how long do you want to wait before the actual reverb begins? And you'll see over here in the bottom left of the plugin that pre-delay is measured in milliseconds. So everything is happening very quickly with the pre-delay. Let me actually play the vocal, and I'm gonna increase this pre-delay time to really exaggerate this effect so that way you can really hear what pre-delay is doing to the vocal.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight. There she goes with the wind in her hair.
Okay, so as you heard, when I increased the pre-delay time, the reverb felt just more disattached from the vocal, and it almost just sounded like a vocal echo, and that's not what we want. We want the reverb to gently, sit on top and kind of hug the vocal in a sense. Now, in order to get the best settings for decay and pre-delay time, you need these to be set in sync with the tempo of your song because reverb is a time-based effect. You don't want your reverb extending out too far and clashing with the next vocal phrase. So there is a mathematical formula that you can use to make sure that you get the pre-delay and the decay setting correct. Go ahead and pull up a calculator and definitely pay attention very closely or else you're gonna get confused. What we'll do is we're gonna take 60,000, which is how many milliseconds are in 1 minute, and we're gonna divide that by the tempo of our song. So the song that I'm working on right now is 141 beats per minute. So I'm gonna divide 60,000 by 141. And what this is gonna give me is the quarter note of our song in milliseconds. And we're gonna use this number to get our decay and pre-delay time. So let's start with getting our decay time. Now, for vocals, you'll want to have a decay time of anywhere between 1 and 3 seconds. Anywhere in that range is gonna give you really good results. Now keep in mind that over here on the plugin, decay time is measured in seconds. And what we've calculated here is milliseconds. Okay, so if we want anywhere between 1 and 3 seconds of decay time, we need at least 1,000 milliseconds here. So what you can do is you can multiply this number by 2. So if you take this quarter note and multiply it by 2, What this gives us is the half note of our song in milliseconds. So we took 60,000, we divided it by the BPM of our song, which gave us the quarter note, and then we multiplied by 2, which gives us the half note right here, 851 milliseconds. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna multiply again by 2. Okay, so we took the half note, we're multiplying by 2, and that gives us the whole note. So 1,702 milliseconds. So that equates to 1.7 seconds. So like I said earlier, you wanna stay around between 1 and 3 seconds for your decay time. So 1.7, we're gonna go ahead and try that. We're gonna type that into our decay time. And let's play the vocal again and take a listen.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight.
Okay, so that sounded pretty good. The reverb wasn't extending out too much to where it was clashing with the next vocal phrase that was coming in. And the reverb kind of just found its space and was in time with the vocal. All right, so that might have been confusing. So let's go ahead and do a quick recap. What we did was we took 60,000, which is how many milliseconds are in 1 minute, and we divided it by the beats per minute of our song, which in this case was 141 beats per minute. This gave us the quarter note for our song in milliseconds. Then we just kept doubling that value until we got something between 1,000 and 3,000 milliseconds, or 1 to 3 seconds, which is what I told you would sound pretty good for most, vocal reverbs. And then we just converted the milliseconds to seconds because decay, for some reason on all the reverb plugins, is measured in seconds and not milliseconds. And you have to realize that when you take a quarter note and you multiply it by 2, you get the half note. And when you multiply that by 2, you get the whole note. So what we're basically doing is we're telling the reverb how many notes to hold the reverb tail out, with the only exception being that we're converting the notes into milliseconds and then the milliseconds into seconds. Now, if you wanted an even bigger reverb sound, what you could do is you could just keep doubling this number by 2. So we stopped at 1.7 seconds and I thought it sounded pretty good, but let's go ahead and double it again. So we'll take it to 3.4. And let's play the vocal.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight. There she goes.
Okay, so that sounded pretty good. And again, we're staying around that 1 to 3 second range for our decay time. If you went any more than that, like 6 seconds, you're gonna start to make the reverb sound muddy because it's gonna be clashing with the main vocal, but it's really all up to you. For me personally, I like that shorter decay time just for the vocal in this song. So I'm gonna take it back to 1.7 seconds. The decay time is definitely a stylistic choice, but for me personally, I've always tried to stay between 1 second and around 3 seconds. But you can always go above and beyond with that. Just experiment and always use that formula so that way you're always in sync with the tempo of your song. If you have a lot of words and syllables in your song, like in rap for instance, where there's not a lot of space in the song between words or phrases, you might want to have a shorter decay time so that way the reverb doesn't wash out, all of the lyrics. You can go higher with your decay times if you have more space in between words and phrases in your song and you're not worried about, that reverb drowning out the next lyric because there's so much space in between each phrase. Okay, so now that we have our decay time set, let's move on to our pre-delay. So for me, I've always found that anything below 50 milliseconds for the pre-delay time always works really good for vocals. So let's go back to the formula that we use. So we got 60,000 divided by the BPM of our song, so 141. And again, this gives us the quarter note of our song in milliseconds. Now, instead of multiplying by 2 like we did with the decay time, we're gonna instead divide by 2. So if we take the quarter note and divide it by 2, this gives us the 8th note. So the 8th note of our song is around 212 milliseconds. So remember, I wanna get below 50 milliseconds. So let's go ahead and divide by 2 again. And this is gonna give us the 16th note. So the 16th note of our song is 106 milliseconds. So again, we divide by 2. So this gives us the 32nd note of our song in milliseconds. So roughly 53 milliseconds. And again, I'm gonna divide by 2 once again. And this gives us the 64th note of our song. So roughly 26 milliseconds. So let's go to our Reverb plugin and let's type in 26 milliseconds. Let's play the vocal again and take a listen.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way.
Okay, so that's sounding pretty good right there at about 26 milliseconds. That is enough time to let our vocal initially cut through the mix, and then the reverb comes right after. And you can always experiment with the pre-delay time. Again, just use the formula and then always stay in multiples, so that way you're in sync with your song. So always be dividing by 2 or multiplying by 2. Okay, so now that we have the pre-delay and the decay time set, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and play the vocal within the context of the whole mix. And we're gonna use this volume fader right here to blend in the amount of reverb that we want. So for me personally, I like to bring the reverb up until I can hear it, and then I'll dial it back just a bit to where it's really just giving the vocal depth, but it's not really drowning the original vocal out.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight. There she goes with the wind in her hair, elegant with such a serious stare.
Okay, so that sounded pretty good. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna play the vocal again, and this time I'm gonna turn the reverb on and off so that way you can hear the difference.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight. There she goes with the wind in her hair, elegant with such a serious stare.
So it's really a creative choice with how much reverb you want to add to the vocal. For me, when the reverb is turned on, I couldn't really hear it. It was kind of subtle, but when I turned it off, that's when I really noticed a difference and it felt like something was missing. And so that's the way that I like to mix the reverb in. But again, you can add as much as you want or as little as you want. So definitely just experiment with that volume fader and just try to, find something that sounds good to your ears. And something else that you want to do is you want to apply EQ to your reverb channel, because reverb has the tendency to muddy up your mix and just take up too much space that is needed for other instruments in your song. So you can either load the EQ plugin before the reverb plugin, or you can load it after. I like to add my EQ plugin right after the reverb plugin. So what we'll do on this EQ plugin is we're gonna cut some of the lows and a little bit of the highs. So on the high pass filter, what I'm gonna do is bring this up and cut pretty much everything below, let's say 350 Hertz. And then on the highs, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut some of the highs. So this will make the reverb have a little bit more of a darker tone to it. And then also right here at about 2000 Hertz, we'll take out some right there just to free up some space in the mid-range for the main vocal, so that way it doesn't have to compete so much with the reverb. You can also add other effects before or after the reverb plugin just to color the signal even more. You could add like a flanger or a chorus, or even really some distortion. That's one of the benefits of having the reverb on its own channel, is that these plugins and other effects won't actually affect the vocal itself, but just the reverb. Let's play the vocal again with the EQ engaged on the reverb channel so you can hear how it's affecting the reverb.
Broken down on the side of the road, withered away, I was stranded alone. Wonder if I could find a string to make my way out of the rain tonight. There she goes with the wind in her hair.
All right, so that's it for today. I hope y'all learned something. If you're still confused about anything, just leave a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can, and I'll see you on the next video.